The prices for food, fuel, and homes are on the rise. But amazingly, mortgage interest rates are still incredibly low. But how long can it last?
If a cash-out refinance or home purchase is in your plans, the clock is ticking. Give our team at Fellowship Home Loans a call at 800-804-SAVE. That's 800-804-7283. And put interest rates in a timeout.
Online, it's fellowshiphomeloans.com. Save on your monthly payment, take cash out to reduce debt, or maybe even shorten your term. Don't let inflation break the bank. Call Fellowship Home Loans at 800-804-SAVE. That's 800-804-7283 or fellowshiphomeloans.com.
The Fellowship Home Loans team will take the time to listen and help you live the dream for less. We listen, we hear, and we care.
Fellowship Home Loans. Welcome home.
Intercontinental Capital Group, DBA Fellowship Home Loans, Equal Housing Opportunity Lender, MLS number 60134.
Very often for all of us, life does not go according to our plan, but that doesn't mean that we are out of God's purpose. And I think we have to understand that Jesus said in this world you will have trouble, trials, tribulation, suffering, pain, heartache, loss, grief. All of that is part of being in this fallen world. But I want you to know it doesn't mean that God is finished with you.
This is CIA, Contagious Influences of America. I'm David Sams. Christine Caine is my guest today here on CIA. Christine, of course, is she's one of the most sought-after speakers out there. She's an author of many, many books, and she's also an activist. She, along with her husband, Nick, founded the anti-human trafficking organization, the A21 campaign, and she's the recipient of the Mother Teresa Memorial Award for her work combating human trafficking amongst refugees. So that's pretty cool. I can't wait for you to hear this interview because she's going to talk to us about her new book. It's called How Did I Get Here? Well, the subtitle is Finding Your Way Back to God When Everything is Pulling You Away. And I know we can relate to that after this last year. So if you're feeling a little lost or disconnected, and you're just seem to be going through the motions, this is the hour for you. So let's get right to my interview that I recently did with Christine Caine. Well, hello there.
Hi, David. How are you?
Well, the last time I saw you, we were doing an event in L.A. at our Women's Night Out with our radio station there in L.A., and
yes.
And that was a whole different world then.
We actually were allowed to do that sort of thing back then.
I think we had like 3,500 women there that night.
Yeah, it was packed.
It was. So here we are. It's a couple years later. You write, I guess, the book that I guess everybody is asking, and that is, how did I get here?
Yes. Yep. I think that is the question that we all have. And, you know, for me, David, it just came out of a time in my life where, like everybody, I think I had the perfect storm sort of happening. It was kind of towards the end of 2016 and 2017. That was sort of the really challenging times in my life where, you know, here I am in America and my mum died in Australia. I had been out on a boat celebrating my 50th birthday with a whole bunch of my friends, and I come back and there's all of these, missed text messages from my brother in Australia to tell me that my mum had passed away. And for me, because of my background of, you know, abandonment and adoption, that kind of deeply, I mean, my mum passing away, period, is a deeply painful thing. But then it kind of uncovered a whole lot of layers of sort of past pain and past trauma in my life. And then my sister-in-law died. My husband's sister died, and his brother-in-law died. So we were sort of back and forth in Australia with a lot of deaths and funerals kind of in that season. It was intense. And, you know, then just a whole lot of transitions at work, and then this personal betrayal of a friendship. It just left me so tender. I felt like I was being hit from all sides. And in the meantime, at the end of 2016, coming into 2017, the whole world was changing. And, when you're a bit of a public figure and so much is going on, I kind of felt swept up in some of all of that stuff. And I just remember one night while my husband was watching, a Navy SEAL kind of show on Hell Week, it was like I was watching this program and it was all designed to make these Navy SEALs kind of want to quit before they became a SEAL, to quit us, in the training camp so that they would never quit on the front lines. And there was this one moment, and I said to my husband, I think this is what I feel like. Like in my life, I've always felt when it comes to my faith and pursuing Jesus, I feel like we've been like the Navy SEALs of the Christian church, man. We're on the front lines, let's abolish slavery. Let's rescue the victims of human trafficking. Let's help women. Let's, help the poor and the marginalized. Let's evangelize. I mean, that's what I'd spent decades of my life doing. And then it was just this moment going of like, I don't know if, I know I can keep doing it, and I don't know if I want to. And in that moment, David, it was like, I thought, how did I get here? How did I get to this place where I thought maybe it would be better to take my foot off the gas? It would be less painful to keep pressing in. It would not cause as much, hurt and sorrow. And it was in that moment that I asked the question that I think so many people is like, where did my heart drift? And how did I get to this place? And what do I need to stay anchored in order to keep going forward? So that's kind of like a bit of the backstory of how we got here.
So where along the way did I lose it? Where did I lose that childlike, adventuresome, that thing that you have where you just go out there and do it without thinking too much about it, without analyzing everything, without prejudging everything, without predicting how the outcome's going to be. How did we get from that childlike place that we were at one point to here we are? We're like, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm not going any further than this. My personal life is in shambles. I thought I was going to be the king of the mountain, and yet, I'm in the valley.
Yeah. I would say, I think that's where so many people find themselves. And, in Hebrews, the writer to the Hebrews, at a time when the church was under such persecution and people were losing property and status, and they were disappointed. And it was just such a challenging time, a lot like the world in which we live in today. I mean, we've been knocked around economically and politically and socially and relationally and morally. And we're all in different parts of life, and things often haven't worked out how we thought. And you kind of sit here and you go, what happened? And, he says that what we need to do is pay very close attention lest we too drift from so great a salvation. And really that was the whole thing I based the book on, is that this is somewhere along the line we stopped paying attention. I remember when I was a kid, we'd go on vacation to this particular spot on the beach, and my dad would always put, an beach umbrella up and a towel up. And he would say to us kids, be careful when you go out swimming, there is a huge undertow. You're not going to feel it. You're not going to see it, but it's there. And if you don't regularly check your markers, that undertow is going to take you out. And he would say, check your markers, because all you have to do to drift is nothing. And so I think it was like a lot of us, when we've ended up in this place going, how did I get here? It's not even that we did something really bad or anything. It could be that, but it's not necessarily that. Oftentimes it's just that we did nothing. We stopped doing the things that we should be doing that actually stop us from drifting and keep us anchored. So the scripture says Jesus is this hope we have as an anchor for our soul, both firm and secure. And every now and again, man, you've got to check your anchor and check that the anchor is actually joined onto the seabed. And we have had such a change in the world, and especially this last year with a global pandemic and so many changes, that we need to check our anchor, because if we do nothing, we will drift, because the disappointments, the discouragement, the challenges, the obstacles, the betrayals, the hurts of life will take us out if we don't stop and go, I'm going to check my markers, and I'm not going to do nothing. I'm going to do those things that help to keep me anchored and help keep me connected to the anchor. And I think that's what I really wanted to take my time in the book to write and say, these are the things in 30 years of being a Jesus follower. These are the things that have not only kept me connected to the anchor, Jesus, who is my hope, but that will continue to keep me connected and get me over the finish line. And I think that's what we're looking for at this point, because so many of us are feeling destabilized and unanchored, and you've got to check your anchor.
So let's talk about that. You talk about some signs where you can say, wow, I'm drifting off course. And then you talk about how to reposition yourself to get back on track. Is that possible?
Very definitely. And here's the good news. You've never drifted so far that you cannot come back and that Jesus won't have you back. The good news is that Jesus is with you everywhere. But I think there are signs. And, in the book, I talked about and I think even the last year, something that would apply a lot to all of us because of the way church life changed so much. In one of I talked about what is it like when you stopped gathering and you start isolating. And I think a lot of us, either through hurt or just getting out of the habit, we've neglected to continue to stay in community. And, we need each other to get over this finish line. And so, different signs that you've drifted are that maybe have we started isolating ourselves? Have we started disconnecting from the very people we should be connected to that will help us to not only run our race, but to finish our course? Somewhere along the line, did we take our foot off the gas? Like, Paul said, this one thing I do, I press on. Well, I know what happened to me a few years ago, was I really thought maybe I'm going to stop pressing. This pressing business is this commitment. It takes a lot. And I think, you've drifted. It's not that you've gone and done something bad, but you stop pressing into the purpose and the will of God. I think when you talked earlier, David, about that childlike wonder. And, Jesus says that we're supposed to put off childish things. So, okay, we've got to mature and grow up, but we are to never lose our childlike wonder. And I think we've had so much pain and discouragement in the world. And, this last year in particular, that I would say for many, many people, that sense of that awe and that wonder and that excitement and that hope and that faith and that joy that can be found in Christ. For a lot of us, it's like, wow, where did that go? But the good news is that I'm not saying, it's going to take all of this work and all of this striving. It's the exact opposite. It's opening up our hearts again to Jesus and the wonder of the gospel and the wonder of his grace and the wonder of his love, and inviting him to come into those places. And sometimes you think, man, I can't even get back, but he will pull you back. And I think that is the joy in all of that there's a waking up going, man, I'm acknowledging that I've drifted away from the purposes of God. I've drifted away from the things of God. And then acknowledging that before the Lord and allowing him to pull you back into himself.
Let's talk about those folks who have drifted off course for one reason or another and how they can reposition themselves. Talk to the woman who never wanted a divorce, but her husband left her. The person who runs marathons and just got diagnosed with terminal cancer. The man who pours his savings into his business that was a God idea and loses it all. Or the teenager who grew up in Sunday school, but is going to rehab for opioids. Talk to those people.
Absolutely. And here is what I want to say. And I think that this is what I've really tried to pastorally speak to in the book, is that very often for all of us, life does not go according to our plan, but that doesn't mean that we are out of God's purpose. And I think we have to understand that, Jesus said, in this world, you will have trouble, trials, tribulation, suffering, pain, heartache, loss, grief. all of that is part of being in this fallen world. But I want you to know it doesn't mean that God is finished with you or that it is over, and that there is, often on disappointment, we're talking about the marathon runner that's going through a health crisis right now. Or, you mentioned the woman that never planned for a divorce or for their child to, be in a rehab center. What do you do with all of that? This is where we put our anchor down even deeper. Instead of, I think the natural tendency is to say, I'm blaming God. God, where are you in the midst of all of this? God, how did you let this happen? And the truth is that God is still with us in the midst of all of this. That doesn't make it less painful, but it does stop us from saying, God, you made this happen. Because the fact is, we live in a fallen world. We live in that tension of the already not yet. One day we're going to live in a world where there are no more tears, there is no more suffering, there is no more cancer, there is no more loss, there is no more grief, there is no more pain in relationships. But we're not there yet. We get a taste of heaven here on earth, but we're not there yet. And I think if we can move beyond saying, God, if you were real, this would not have happened to me, to a place where we say, God, even though this has happened to me, I know you are still with me. I know you still love me. I know you still have a plan for me. I know you still have a purpose for me in the midst of my disappointment, in the midst of my pain. I think in the book I talk about the difference between a what if and an even if faith. And I think we are in a season where it's even if. So what even if, man, I used to run marathons and now my health is compromised. Jesus, you are still Lord, and I'm still going to worship you. Yes, I'm disappointed. Yes, this is painful. Yes, I wasn't expecting this. I'm not denying that. I'm not minimizing it. I'm not dismissing it. I'm not devaluing it. But this is not the end of my story. This is not where it ends. Jesus, you are with me in it. You have grace for me in it. You have got a life and a purpose for me beyond it. And that's what I want to say to everyone. This is not the end. I know that it's a painful chapter, and I know that it's a painful circumstance, and I know that it's a painful situation, but this is not the end of the story. And in the midst of it, Jesus is with you, and Jesus will sustain you, and Jesus will strengthen you, and you will find a depth in your relationship with him that you otherwise would never, ever have known. And I'm here to tell you, there is life beyond this present suffering, this present pain, this present heartache that doesn't minimize how painful it is at all, or it doesn't in any way try to negate the disappointment and the discouragement of that business venture going belly up. And I think there are a lot of things in our life that we go, God, I thought I heard you. And I think even when I start the book, I'm saying, here I am. I'm in ministry. I'm running a global anti-trafficking organization. I'm running a global women's organization. And in the midst of traveling and proclaiming the gospel, I'm like, how did I get here? I didn't expect that friend to betray me. I didn't expect that loss. I didn't expect that thing to happen in the business. Every day we're confronted. And then that really brought me to a place to go, okay, so even if this betrayal happens, or even if this didn't work out how I thought, you are still God. And I want an even if faith that transcends my circumstances, that transcends my present pain, and that transcends my present circumstances. And I found the reality of God in the pit of my despair at times in a way that I hadn't known before. Still, of course, I never wanted any of that to happen, but I did discover the grace of God in the midst of it.
We really have to expect the unexpected.
That's what it comes down to, because that is life. The thing that Jesus has promised us is that he will never leave us, that he will never forsake us. The thing that we know about God from Psalm 119 is that God is good and that God does good. And we know from the book of James that every good and perfect gift comes from God. So we know that the character and nature of God is good. And we also know that we live in a fallen world, that bad things happen to good people. And that God will give us grace. Sometimes he'll deliver us from a situation, but many times he will walk us through the valley of the shadow of death. And I think that's part of the faith adventure. It is not that we're expecting bad, we're just expecting the unexpected, that when you have your life so mapped out, when you put in a God in a box and you say, this is how you have to work, God, and this is my plan. And every now and again, God interrupts our plan for his purpose, and his purpose always exceeds our plan.
Give me an example yourself of a time that that you just felt like, oh my gosh, I am in this predicament. I am in this situation. God, where are you? You didn't get an immediate answer, and you started questioning God. Tell me about that time that you were just in that dark place, and how did you get out of it?
Yeah, I think, one of my darkest places was just when I experienced a very deep personal betrayal from a friend, and we were, doing different projects together and had some plans for where this would all go in the future. And then all of a sudden, just kind of almost out of nowhere, I think I just felt ghosted. Like, it's just like this thing suddenly has just, I don't know why this person has pulled back. I don't know why all the plans have changed. And I had a little moment of an existential crisis of faith, because I thought, God, I thought you were in this, and I thought we were going to do all of these projects together. And, we'd gone down a certain path of planning certain initiatives. And I thought that was going to be the next 2 or 3 years of my life and ministry. And all of a sudden, I felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. And I just felt like the wind had been taken out of my sails, and that all of this time and planning and purpose and relationship that had been built and trust that had been established and dreaming that had been done and prayers that had been prayed. I'm like, what just happened? And it really rocked me. It rocked my sense of my own ability to hear from the Lord, to truly follow his voice, to trust people, to trust initiatives. And I found myself, for a good solid year, just kind of very destabilized and very second guessing myself and wondering, oh God, where were you in all of this? Why did you let this happen? And I think I had to really fight to not be offended at God, because I thought I was following the Lord, and I thought I was hearing his voice, and I thought he was opening all of these doors. And then here I am in this place of just confusion and pain. And it really, my mind, I was obsessively ruminating for so long. And I felt like, in a way, it robbed a solid year of my focus and my life and my emotions. The thing that got me through, David, to be honest, was I had a couple of other really good friends. You get hurt in relationships and you get healed through relationship, I think, a lot of times. And God used a couple of other really close friends in my life that came alongside me, that walked me through, that reminded me of the promise of God, reminded me of the word of God, reminded me that God still had a future for me, that God loved me, that God had a plan for my life. And I think, they were there for me whenever I needed. I would just pick up a phone, and if I needed to cry, they didn't judge me for my emotions. They didn't try to rush me in my healing process. They didn't try to sanitize it all and make it all just seem sweet, but they kept me moving forward. They helped to lift my head and keep my eyes fixed on Jesus. So I would say good, godly Christian friends, are what God used in this case to really help get me re-anchored, reconnected to my hope in Jesus, and really deeply anchored in back into my purpose, and keeping me really fixing my eyes on Jesus, because sometimes you just need some help to get people to help lift your head and lift your eyes out of the pain of your present circumstances onto the future that God has for you.
How do you personally get unstuck when you're in a rut? And how do you dig yourself out of sort of a mental hole? There are a lot of folks right now who are they're just in a rut, and they don't know where to turn. They don't know who to turn to. Let's face it. It takes a month to retrain your mind, and we've been in this for over a year. And how do we get out of it?
I've got a chapter in the book where I talk about going spiritual keto. And I talk about the story where my husband's training for this bike race. So he had to go on a keto diet to just for the sake of his fitness for this race. So the whole family decided to go on this keto diet with him. And we hated it because I'm Greek and we love our carbohydrates. And my children were just like, oh, you've got to be kidding, Mum. I don't want to do this. But it so disrupted our diet. We needed it. We went on it for a month. Because then it just got us, it sort of aggressively got our body back into a state of going, you know what, we need to be healthy. We need to be eating healthy food. We need to feel better and get out of our funk. And what I say is sometimes we need to go on a spiritual keto diet where we go, okay, I have got to disrupt. We've spent a year and, being inside or with just very, very different rhythms now because of the pandemic. And I, in my own life, had to make some decisions to get unstuck. I began again going, okay, this is it. Whether I like it or not, that alarm is going off early. In terms of my physical fitness, I'm going to start working out early again. I'm going to start getting myself into a new Bible reading plan and just disrupt my spiritual lethargy. I am going to start stacking the fridge with healthy food because I'm going to disrupt my, I kept using excuses for my diet. Well, we're in quarantine. What can you do? And I think there comes a time where you go, okay, to get out of this pattern that I'm stuck in, I'm going to have to physically do something to massively disrupt this sort of just status quo that I'm in. And out of that, I have found that as I've gotten my body healthy again, as I've gotten back into my spiritual disciplines in a more focused way, I have found a new passion and a new joy and a new peace come back into my life. And I have found that I'm looking to the future and I have more purpose and a sense of hope. And I really think there's a strong correlation between how we're feeling physically and then how we end up feeling spiritually. And I think sometimes you've just got to go, I call it go spiritual keto on yourself. Disrupt the rhythm that you're in by doing something that is just like, okay, I'm going to set that alarm clock and I'm just going to do this. And I think as you do, we're going to have to force ourselves to make new habits, to break a whole lot of the old habits that we developed over the last year.
So tell me, to wrap this up, tell me why someone should pick up your book, How Did I Get Here? Tell me the one specific reason that they should pick it up and what they're going to get out of it. What value is it going to bring to them?
Absolutely. I think the main value is you are going to be filled with hope again, that your best days are ahead of you and not behind you, that Jesus has a plan and a purpose for you, and that you have not drifted so far that you cannot fulfill and complete the will of God for your life. This is not a time to be drifting from God, but coming home to Him and finding your purpose and your passion in Him.
Fantastic. Hey, Christine, it's been great. Great catching up with you, and hope to see you soon, okay?
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks, David.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And thank you, Christine. The book is called How Did I Get Here? Finding Your Way Back to God When Everything is Pulling You Away. Be sure you do pick that up. It's available right now. I'm David Sams, and this has been CIA, Contagious Influences of America, from the producers of Keep the Faith. And hey, also check out our radio website. It's pretty cool at keepthefaith.com. You can hear all kinds of wonderful episodes of our actual radio show. And if you want to hear more Contagious Influencers podcast, just go to contagiousinfluencers.com. And if you can't spell Contagious Influencers, just go to ciapodcast.com. And there you'll find, I think we're up to like 130 or so episodes. So please do so. I'm David Sams, and you've been listening to CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. Hey, please go out there and live that life in living color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living in black and white. And along the way, rate and review us. Give us 5 stars, okay? We'll see you next week.